So for me, frontline therapy changed. Frontline therapy changed when Ipi/Nivo got approved in the U.S. in April of this year, 2018. So prior to that, outside a clinical trial, we would use single-agent TKI, commonly Sutent or Pazopanib, and then would use nivolumab monotherapy as second line, and then another TKI. When Ipi/Nivo was approved, it's our regimen of choice pretty much for all patients. That does include favorable risk patients where I know sunitinib had better targeted therapy outcomes, such as response rate and PFS, but the complete response rate is still higher with Ipi/Nivo, and I think it gives patients the best chance of durable response. So in our clinic, in my clinic, we tend to use that as the predominant frontline therapy, assuming patients can tolerate it. I'll use a VEGF TKI in the frontline setting if I don't think patients can tolerate Ipi/Nivo. So maybe an older, more frail patient, maybe somebody with autoimmune disease, people where I'm worried that the potential toxicity, where they may not have the organ reserve to fight it. I think that's probably at present maybe only about 10% of patients or so. The other issue is that I think Ipi/Nivo requires some expertise. So we have a number of patients who drive quite a distance to see us. So their local oncologist may or may not be comfortable giving Ipi/Nivo. Usually in those patients, however, I'll have them get the 4 induction doses with us and then go back to their local oncologist for maintenance, and that generally works well. So I don't at present factor risk status much into the decision. I think a lot of people will take their intermediate and poor risk patients and give them Ipi/Nivo, and favorable risk still give a TKI. As I mentioned, I don't do that. I think Ipi/Nivo is appropriate for favorable risk, but not everybody feels that way. There are data sets coming out now with a VEGF agent plus an immune agent. And you can imagine those kind of combinations might cover the favorable risk and also produce high response rates. And so I think some of this discussion around favorable risk in Ipi/Nivo is going to go away over time because we'll have other immune-based combinations that are applicable. PD-L1 is a biomarker, is sort of a long and checkered history in many diseases, including kidney cancer. So I would say, in summary, it's associated with response, it enriches for response, but it's by no means a perfect biomarker because PD-L1 negative patients can still respond, including complete responses. So while it's been looked at in trials and a stratification factor, and some trials have used that population for their primary endpoint, I don't think in clinical practice at present, until there's more data, that it's terribly useful. Cabozantinib is unique in that it inhibits MET and AXL, which are receptors that are felt to be important from preclinical models in resistance to VEGF therapy. And so Cabo was first approved in VEGF refractory patients, somewhat based on that rationale. It's clearly an active drug. So I think that biochemical profile is what differentiates it. MET and AXL are apparently involved in resistance to VEGF targeted therapy. This has been shown in several preclinical models. And so if you target them simultaneously with VEGF, the theory would be that you won't become resistant to VEGF as soon. And so technically it should produce a longer progression-free survival and or have activity in VEGF refractory patients. Cabo sort of had an interesting development history. It's, the phase 1 was done just in intermediate and poor risk patients. I'm not exactly sure why. Then the phase 3 Meteor, which was in the refractory setting, was done in all comers, and then Cabo-Sun, which was the frontline randomized phase 2 against Sutent, was done just in intermediate and poor. So it's not really clear to me whether it has enhanced activity in intermediate and poor risk patients, as we clearly see, say, with an Ipi/Nivo. I think it more has to do with just kind of how it was developed. So I'm not aware of data that intermediate or poor risk patients express MET or AXL more or somehow are more susceptible to Cabo. I think it has more to do just with its clinical development plan.